Hey, I'm Jacob.
And I'm Dan. In this series, we're getting into some pretty difficult questions that we don't always have the answers to and don't always know who to ask to get the proper answers. This week, we're asking a particularly difficult question: what happens when we die?
You know, I've heard stories of people who say they experienced what heaven was like after a major surgery or a near-death experience, and they always talk about how amazing and beautiful it is.
Yeah, I saw a movie with a young boy who had an experience like that. But when it comes to those situations, we don't always have the evidence to back it up. Let's watch this week's God story and see if we can get a little bit more background on that.
Watch this.
I once wrote a song about a tortilla, or was it a rap? Hey everyone, great to see you again. Now, I don't know if you had a pet growing up, but I did. So he was about this size, he was a little dog, a Bichon Shih Tzu, and his name was Cabot. So I grew up with him throughout high school, and when I was away for Bible college, I get a call from my dad. And he says, Aaron, this is literally all it was, Aaron, Cabot's dead. No explanation, nothing, just here are the facts. So he was very unemotional about it. I was broken up weeping about this dog. So when I got home for Christmas, we made a headstone and put it by the cabin for him. But it started me thinking about what happens to dogs when they die. And then it started thinking, and that's the big idea for this week, what happens when we die? So that's a great question. And to be honest, if you're looking for me or anyone to give you all the answers, prepare to be disappointed. Because nobody really knows all the answers. But see, people have been asking these questions for thousands of years. They want to know. Here's what we do know. As Christ followers, as people who follow Jesus, it's what Jesus did, his life, his death, his resurrection. That means we don't need to fear death anymore. But there's more good news. As Christ followers, we get to spend eternity with God. That's forever. And what's even cooler is this life that Jesus calls us to. It doesn't start when we die, when we get to heaven. It starts right now, right here. So let's get to today's God story. We're gonna be dropping in on a conversation between Jesus and his disciples. Let's take a look in John 14. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I am going. Jesus had just told his disciples what was gonna happen, that he was going to be killed, so obviously they were a little worried about this. Did you catch that? Jesus describes heaven as his Father's house, and it has a place for us. How cool is that? Now, is heaven actually like a big house? Well, probably not. Jesus is using a metaphor. He's taking something that we understand, a house, and using it to describe something we don't yet understand, so we can get it. I know I've said a few times that we don't have all the answers, and I totally get that can be frustrating. But here's the thing, though we don't have all the exact details, what we do know is that when we die, we'll be with God. That's pretty cool. So Jesus' disciples are still a little concerned, but let's continue reading the story. No, we don't know, Lord, Thomas said. We have no idea where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. If you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. So Thomas still wanted clarity. And what did Jesus say? He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Answer given. So you're probably still wondering about the question, what happens when we die? Well, here's what you need to know. The need to know is that Jesus has our back when we die. That's the part you need to focus on. All right, let's keep reading. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. Jesus replied, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and yet you still do not know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me, who does his work through me. Just believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Or at least believe because of the work you have seen me do. All right, is anyone else a little more confused? Yeah, I'm not the only one? Perfect. Let's break down what's happening. The disciples want to know the way to God, but really they're kind of struggling with the concept that Jesus is God. And then, of course, their minds explode because Jesus is talking about a really big idea, which is that we have one God, but he's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, 3 in 1. Let's read how the discussion ends. I tell you the truth, anyone who believes in me will do the same works I have done, and even greater works. because I am going to be with the Father. You can ask him for anything in my name, and I will do it, so that the Son can bring glory to the Father. Yes, ask for anything in my name, and I will do it. Jesus knows that his time is coming to an end here on earth, that he is gonna go to the Father, and that's what he's telling his disciples. And this is tough for the disciples for two reasons. Number one, they've been hanging around this dude for years. They're his friends. They're gonna be sad to see him leave. And number two, they still don't really understand what's going on. And maybe you don't understand what's going on. And again, that is totally okay. Again, they were following Jesus for years and they didn't get it. But the important thing is we keep asking and we keep looking into it and we focus on the fact that Jesus is gonna be with us after we die. So we don't need to be afraid of death because Jesus is the way and that's who we're following. That's it for this week, guys. See you later.
So we know we don't have all the answers, but we know that when we die, we're gonna be with God. And because of that, there's nothing to fear.
Yeah, it reminds me of this time I was on a road trip with some friends, and we had to go through this long, dark tunnel. And inside the tunnel it's dark and you don't really know what's around you, but you see that light on the other end of the tunnel and you know your destination's on the other side.
And it's good that you focused on that light. But for now, let's check in with our friends at the campfire and see whether Natalie and Jimmy can answer their questions.
Hey guys, welcome back to the campfire. This kind of round of conversation, we're gonna talk about when we die. What happens? What's the scoop? So I know this is kind of a big topic, but do you guys have any questions?
What happens when we die?
I think the reality is that we don't really know what happens exactly right after we die. Remember earlier on today when you guys were getting ready to go up on the high ropes? You don't really know what it's gonna be like when you get up there, right? But you can have certain ideas about what it's going to be like, but you don't actually find out until you're up on the high ropes kind of looking at what's going on around you. I think that's kind of like when we die. We know that when we die, we'll be with Jesus. That's awesome. That's the best thing ever. But beyond that, there's not a lot of really specific stuff we know about when we die.
What do we know about heaven?
Okay, this is gonna be the best 2 minutes of your life. What we know about heaven is that everybody gets a huge eternal bag of their favorite candy, and you all get jetpacks, so just kidding. Heaven is actually like an English word. It's a description word that points us towards what happens after this life is over and this new life that doesn't end with God begins. And what we know about heaven is exactly that. It is with God. That's the definition, the literal definition of the word. The Jews, so the people that lived around Jesus in the first century when he was alive, used the word actually shalom to describe what perfect union with God looked like, but also perfect union with like each other. And so that's actually the best picture of heaven, what it looks like, what it will be like that we have. It's shalom, unity, linked togetherness with God and with each other. That there's a part of this life that passes, suffering, death, sickness, separation from God, and a new life begins where we're linked in a shalom way with God. So what heaven is not, it's not a giant bag of Skittles, nor is it a jetpack. What heaven is it's something so much better.
Awesome. So we get to all be together with God.
Yeah.
That sounds like heaven.
Agreed.
Are there any other questions?
Do we become angels?
You know what? A lot of people think that we do. A lot of people would say, you know, when so-and-so died, they became an angel and now they look down on you. And it's a really nice thought. It's a really nice idea. But the truth is that we don't become angels. We're still people. And that angels are actually a separate entity, a separate being that was created by God. So angels, humans, totally different things. But angels are cool, and I really look forward to seeing some when we do die. So great questions, you guys. I love that you're thinking about these kinds of things. And we'll have more time next time. But for now, we're gonna say peace out.
Peace out, everyone.
Jacob, did you know that the word heaven means to be with God?
No, I didn't, but that's really cool and changes my image for what heaven looks like.
Absolutely. Let's break into our small groups now and see what this looks like in our own lives.